Good evening. I want to talk to you about Development 3.3, which is about imperialism. And um, imperialism, the new imperialism, is a phenomenon of the 19th century or the 1800s, early 20th century. And it is new for a couple reasons. This is talked about in your book, but I want to just make sure I highlight it. It's more extensive and it's more intensive. Okay, I think that's a good way to explain it. More extensive in the sense that you actually see almost all of Africa and great portions of Asia come under European rule, and some under American rule too, in the Pacific and in the Caribbean. And so it is a greater there's a greater extent of colonial control by Western European countries and the United States. Okay, it's bigger, more extensive. It's also more intensive in the sense of controlling societies in more centralized, more detailed ways. So setting up schools, setting up a lot of officials on the ground in these countries, thinking about changing cultures, right? And so there's just more European presence plus more technology to allow them and to do that. So we can see this as you read. Okay. Now this new imperialism, you can think of it as following on older imperialism with the setup of the European colonies in the Americas and Asia beforehand. And really, though, in Africa and Asia before the 1800s, most of the European presence was based on trading posts and small little incursions, setups of fortresses and settlements, merchant colonies. And those allowed for Europeans to trade with Africans and Asians. But they really could not penetrate very far into these societies in most cases. Okay. Now, in the Americas, because of disease, Europeans were able to take over basically all of North and South America, at least till they claimed all of that. And so here, though, with new imperialism, we have European dominance in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. And most of the globe is controlled directly or indirectly by European powers, I should say, controlled directly or influenced indirectly by European powers. Okay, and so India in 1857, roughly in the late 1850s, comes under official British rule, not under the rule of the East India Company. And there's no more Mughal Empire to rule there. All of Africa, except for Ethiopia and Liberia and I think Sierra Leone, comes under European rule in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. Now, this is built on the things we looked at before in the Industrial Revolution, modernization, and the three classic reasons why Europeans pursued imperialism are, as I detail in the development sheet, economic reasons, cultural reasons, political reasons. Okay, and you can read more about that, but what I want to talk about is how those are all based in previous developments we've looked at before. The economic reasons are based in industrialization. European countries had undergone industrialization. The big imperial powers of France, of Britain, Germany, lesser imperial powers like Belgium, the Netherlands, all these had industrialized, and they had come to the point where their militaries had been transformed, their economies had been transformed, and they're also looking for markets for their products and everything, as well as the kind of resources that you can use to fuel industrial production. So there's in the 1890s a rubber boom, and so there's a quest to get control of as much rubber resources, as many rubber resources as possible. And these can be used. Rubber can be used to make tires, for example, in these industrial countries. All right. So the global modernization we looked at last time, where European countries are the first, in that definition, modernized countries. Global modernization encourages imperialism to continue to fuel modernization. Okay. The cultural reasons are based on a European sense of differentness, of superiority. Now, this was something that had been the case for a long time, it seems, that European countries had seen themselves as different because of religious factors as well as cultural factors. Okay, that's not very different from a lot of other cultures and areas of the world, that people see themselves as different from other peoples in religious and cultural aspects. Here we do have this growing sense, it seems, of European sense of differentness based on their technological and economic achievements. Okay, and that goes along with religious and cultural factors that we've seen before. And so we have this European sense of differentness. European elites especially are going to be saying, we are more civilized than the peoples of Africa and Asia and the Pacific, and therefore we have some kind of right or responsibility to rule these places, either to make them better or to make ourselves stronger by conquering them. Again, there's different reasons and different ways those cultural reasons are expressed. But that sense of technological superiority, of a more civilized races, and sometimes, as we looked at last time, and you'll see in the readings this time, social Darwinism, right, where Europeans are the fitter races, the more highly evolved peoples who have the right or the responsibility to extend their influence around the globe. That's another aspect of these cultural reasons. And these cultural reasons might not have been as powerful without the major transformation of European culture that we've seen with the Industrial Revolution and modernization. And then political reasons. Political reasons are another important factor in why European countries pursued imperialism. And we've seen in Europe there are competing states, right? The French versus the Germans, the British rivalry with France and later Germany, wars between different European countries, and the necessity to build up strong armies and navies to protect your own country, to fight against other countries, to take other countries' colonies and territories. And so imperialism means that the world is the stage for these kind of competitions between the great powers, especially Britain, France, and Germany. Okay? And so these reasons for imperialism are all shaped by the previous developments that we've looked at. And you can see that this is not uncontroversial. There are people who criticize imperialism in Europe. Also, non-Europeans like Gandhi, like the many other people that you see in the chapter. This is controversial, and also that you'll see that non-Europeans will use European ideas sometimes to criticize imperialism. Okay, and that's going to be important. I'd also just ask you to look at toward the end of the development where it talks about the long-term global transformations associated with imperialism too, to keep that in mind and see how it might relate to today.